With just 3 days left in the legislative session, lawmakers got their first look at the fiscal year 2017 state budget, a spending plan that is touted as the best lawmakers could do, but still leaves state agencies facing major budget cuts, with many planning service reductions, employee buyouts, and potential furloughs. We have two reports on the budget that faced hostile lawmakers from both parties.
Word that an agreement had been reached on a state budget began circulating the halls of the Capitol early Tuesday and were confirmed by House Speaker Jeff Hickman at the conclusion of a lengthy House Republican caucus meeting.
Our belief is that we have reached an agreement that reflects the priorities of Oklahomans, addresses critical needs in the middle of a historic oil bust in our state.
The $6.9 billion budget agreement relies on a series of tax credit reforms and one-time sources of revenue, including a $200 million bond issue for transportation to free up money for the General Revenue Fund, rolling over money from a cash flow reserve fund, capping the rebate for at-risk oil wells, eliminating an income tax double deduction, and taking $144.4 million from the state's rainy day fund. It adds up to a budget that is about $360.7 million less than the budget that began in July of last year. The first stop for the budget deal was the Senate Joint Committee on Appropriations and Budget, where Senate Finance Committee Chairman Mike Mazzei quickly found some things he didn't like. Mazzei believes the deal depends too heavily on one-time fixes, which will leave the state facing another budget hole next year that he estimates will be between $600 and $700 million.
So when I look at this, I unfortunately come to the conclusion that we didn't push hard enough. We didn't push hard enough on some tax credit issues. We didn't push hard enough on some apportionment issues, and we kind of gave in towards the end on the total amount of borrow.
Appropriations Chair Clark Jolly defended the deal, calling it the best they could reach under difficult circumstances.
We have pushed, I think, as a Senate, both in appropriations as well as in finance, very aggressively. And if we had not been that aggressive, we would not have the recurring revenues now that we do have that will keep us from having the structural deficits that we've had in the past from being as large in the future.
Mazzei continued his criticisms when the bill came up for a vote on the Senate floor. He pointed out the Senate agreed to a larger transportation bond issue in exchange for the House voting to eliminate a tax credit for the wind industry.
Specifically, the House was supposed to pass as part of the budget agreement ending the zero-emission facility tax credit by the end of 2017. Since that's what was told to the members of this body, wouldn't it make more sense, Mr. President, to lay this bill over and give the members of both caucuses much more time to discuss the general appropriation bill?
The bill to eliminate the zero-emission tax credit failed by one vote, but Jolly disagreed about whether that was enough to scuttle the budget deal.
I find that highly disappointing, but I feel like we need to live up to our end of the bargain, which is to try to pass a general appropriations bill that funds state government, and not say, well, just because the House wasn't able to live up to its side, that the Senate should refuse to live up to its side.
Senator Kay Floyd questioned why delaying the income tax cut, which took effect January 1st, was not part of the deal.
And I am disappointed that we weren't even allowed to put rolling back the income tax on the table, because I know that the vast majority of my constituents would like to see that happen, and I believe the vast majority of Oklahomans would be willing to forego their $40 a year in order to avoid bond indebtedness.
I can assure you that we had dialogues on a weekly basis, that Chairman Mazzei had a weekly dialogue with his counterpart on the House side to try to make sure that all options were put on the table, and I have confidence that Senator Mazzei, who has been an outspoken advocate for the policy you're advocating here, included those in the discussion.
Floyd also asked if more of the state's rainy day fund should be used to avert deeper cuts to state agencies. Jolly conceded lawmakers could tap the entire fund if they declared an emergency.
I don't believe that would be wise. We are utilizing 3/8 again, so we can leave about $241 million in the rainy day fund for the gentlelady from Oklahoma City and her colleagues to utilize next year.
Another issue troubling some lawmakers were deep cuts to higher education, amounting to about 16% less than last year's appropriation. Jolly admits those will be difficult for the state's colleges and universities.
But I know that they've been able to weather cuts in the past. I think this is going to be a very difficult cut for them. I would prefer that we would cut them less, but again, getting back to the same point I made in reference to the minority leader earlier, we only have so much money to spend.
One line in the budget deal has raised eyebrows, a huge increase for one state agency. Bob Sands has more on that.